initiatives, is diversity lagging in most elite fields? And why do many white Americans believe that racial progress has been much better than the numbers suggest? Our current diversity conversation began in 1968, when President Lyndon Johnson's National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders recommended the inclusion of African Americans in institutions that had historically excluded them. The Kerner Commission, as it came to be known, highlighted the need to address the shameful legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. It overlooked, however, the haunting invisibility of Native Americans, an estimated 90% of whom were killed by disease and war in the wake of European settlement. Native Americans and Alaskan Natives, including those of more than one race, number around 6.7 million, or 2% of the population. Regrettably, given their small numbers, they barely register in much of the data. Since 1968, diversity, of course, has been expanded to encompass other racial and ethnic minorities, along with women, people with physical and mental disabilities, LGBTQIA individuals, and other marginalized populations. However, given the issues unique to each distinct group and the ways in which the plight of racial minorities in general, and African Americans in particular, have been overshadowed by other categories within this overtaxed term, this book will specifically address the progress the nation has made toward racial diversity. Race, of course, is a complicated and often imprecise designation that in the United States has always relied less on ancestry than on appearance. Those who most resemble what is considered white are generally accorded greater status. It's a messy social construction that nonetheless matters when trying to sense the texture of American life for distinct segments of the population. But it is challenging, given the shifting terrain. The classification of Hispanic/Latinx connotes ethnicity and not race, which could range from black to white. And given the invisibility of Native Americans in most metrics, and the ascendance of Asians in STEM fields and in income earning, there is no way to paint a complete portrait of America's complex racial landscape. Further clouding the picture, Asians, who encompass a broad spectrum of people, cultures, and languages across a continent, are, relative to their numbers in the general population, either disproportionately over- or underrepresented, depending on the field. To examine the nation's progress toward racial diversity, I focus on the three largest racial/ethnic minority groups: Hispanics/Latinx, African Americans/Black, and Asian Americans. I alternately use African American or Black and Hispanic for the sake of clarity, even though the terminology in the data I cite varies. Encompassed within race and ethnicity are, of course, all the other classifications, including physical and cognitive disability, gender, and sexual orientation, that become doubly or triply burdened by interlocking systems of discrimination. Still, a half-century after Kerner, the black-white divide is still most palpable in American life. The stark disparities between the two groups remain the most telling indicators of America's racial breach. However, the expansion of America's racial tableau and the long history of discriminatory federal policies and attitudes directed at other Americans considered non-white require an examination of efforts to fold racial and ethnic minorities into the mainframe of the nation. America, despite the presence and contributions of many, remains, at least in the public imagination and in most realms of influence, dominated by whiteness. I explore diversity across numerous fields, but pay sustained attention to three fields in particular: academia, Hollywood, and corporate America, each of which has publicly and privately grappled with the issue over the past 5 decades. They are among the fields whose leaders have, in recent years, renewed their commitment to diversity, collectively pledging billions of dollars to commission studies, set up training sessions, and hire consultants and czars to oversee diversity programs. These efforts have, among other things, shored up a multi-billion-dollar industry, expanding opportunities for an ever-growing number of law firms, consultants, and senior-level executives. It's impossible to understand.